Blog Talk Radio.
Let everyone know that the regulars march for Lexington and Concord. The British are coming!
Why is no one anywhere in the world telling you the truth and telling you to prepare? I will tell you that I had a network, one of the big three.
Frankly, I think they're misleading their followers. I think they're pushing our members in places where they don't want to be. And frankly, I just think that they've lost all credibility. You know, when they pushed us into this fight to defund Obamacare and to shut down the government. Most of you know, my members know, that wasn't exactly the strategy that I had in mind.
Well, there's another strange story out about the Department of Homeland Security. The agency has announced a requirement for armed protective security officer services at various locations throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin to the tune of $19 million. And what's more, DHS says, quote, the project will have a requirement for the contractor to have a top-secret facility clearance by the start of performance. Now, in light of all that has come out about DHS stockpiling hollow point ammunition and other sorts of bullets and full auto assault rifles and purchasing checkpoint booths and retrofitting armored vehicles, a lot of people are asking, what is going on now? What is this all about? Is it for a legitimate purpose? And if so, what is that purpose? So we're going to try to get some answers today from Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert. He's also vice chair of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security. And it's so wonderful.
There's just a lot of things that continue to be unanswered by the Department of Homeland Security. And I use that term loosely because, as Coburn has pointed out, Senator Tom Coburn, the department is wasting money right and left. They're disorganized. And, they've spent supposedly $90 billion on border security, and the border is not secured at all. Some estimates are around 40% or so. And so this report about new efforts in Wisconsin and in that area, it makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm just giving all this background to listeners so they can understand that hopefully they should be as skeptical of Homeland Security and the Justice Department as I think you and I are.
Well, I agree.
We owe $70 trillion.
I understand that, but
to walk out a $4 trillion solution, which is basically just a way for the Democrats to avoid dealing with this until 2017. I'm not here to talk about plans to deal with this till 2017. I'm saying we've got a real problem, and I'm tired of Republicans and Democrats who Republicans who want to burn the place to the ground, and Democrats, with all due respect, who want to offer a plan that gets it through their end of their second term of their presidency, and then screws me and my kids when it's over. And until we do that, we have to deal with the extraction that is at foot. It is the reason the financial markets are behaving the way they're behaving. That is a mathematical fact. This is not some opinion. This is a mathematical fact. Tens of trillions of dollars are being extracted from the United States of America. Democrats aren't doing it. Republicans are not doing it. An entire integrated system, financial system, trading system, taxing system that was created by both parties over a period of 2 decades is at work on our entire country right now. And we're sitting here arguing about whether we should do the $4 trillion plan that kicks the can down the road for the president for 2017 or burn the place to the ground, both of which are reckless, irresponsible, and stupid.
But it is the night of broken glass. It is the Nazis are here. They have finally walked through that door. Now it is your choice to whether you see it or not, and God will not hold us blameless. When I was talking about this for the last few years, I was telling you these things were coming and saying God will not hold us blameless. You have to prepare for these things. I am telling you right now, they are happening. You can find the information. You can actually see the video. There is no excuse. No excuse will be accepted at the end of our lives. No excuse will be accepted. We all say never again. Well, it's happening right now. It is happening right now. And you will be held accountable for everything that you do. I know nobody wants to hear that, and nobody ever wants to hear a hell and brimstone, fire and brimstone kind of preacher, but I'm sorry.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? What if Democrats and Republicans were two wings of the same bird of prey? They just provided the populace with meaningless participation in a process that validates an establishment that never meaningfully changes. What if that establishment doesn't want and doesn't have the consent of the governed? What if the two-party system was actually a mechanism used to limit so-called public opinion? What if there were more than two sides to every issue, but the two parties wanted to box you into a corner, one of their corners? What if there's no such thing as public opinion, because every thinking person has opinions that are uniquely his own? What if what we call public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, then there's something wrong with that, or there's something wrong with them? What if the whole purpose of the Democratic and Republican parties was not to expand voters' choices, but to limit them? What if the widely perceived differences between the two parties was just an illusion? What if the heart of the government policy remains the same no matter who's in the White House? What if the heart of government policy remains the same no matter what the people want?
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Here are the aims for the United States. 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied, naturally and automatically, by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace. Peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world and of the United States itself.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Robert Rule Show. I'm your host, Robert Rule. Today is Monday, August 4th, 2014. I apologize for not doing the last two shows. I actually had a family member go into the military. And we saw her off today. So, family time is important to me. I'm concerned. I'm very, very concerned. And I'll tell you why. All you have to do is listen to this clip right here. I told you, actually, a lot of people told you. Alex Jones has warned about it for a long, long time. Other conservatives have warned you about this. And I want you to look back and remember as you hear this, me warning you that this was coming. Now, can we change it? Absolutely. Now we're going to go over that because this is just another political tool. And what happens, what has happened in the history of the world when it comes to politics? What has always happened? Just listen to this clip. We're going to go over this before I get into the headlines. And, let's take care of that first. So here it is. Pay close attention to this.
Folks, thanks for watching. Well, Republicans are always fear-mongering about threats facing America overseas. Righties try to scare people about Al-Qaeda, Syria, ISIS, and, of course, Hamas. You name it, and the next day Republicans are out there just greasing up the skids on the Tomahawk missiles ready to launch. There is a new report that shows the greatest threat facing this country is right here at home. There is a new study out from the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, better known as START. Now, START is a government program funded by the Department of Homeland Security. They're supposed to know the threats. START believes the greatest potential threat to America is the sovereign citizen movement. Islamic terrorists and extremists, they are second, and militia movement is rated as third. Sovereign citizens don't recognize the government. They like to interpret the law for themselves. And this report isn't surprising at the least when you consider what we've been through. This year alone, we've seen the sovereign citizen movement gain steam with racist freeloading rancher Cliven Bundy. Cliven Bundy has made it clear he doesn't believe in the federal government.
We run cattle here, graze this natural resource off this public land, and I abide by all of Nevada state laws. But I don't recognize the United States government as even existing. America better wake up if we're going to live in this country with any kind of freedom and liberty.
So Cliven Bundy is a perfect example of what this country is facing when it comes to a threat. Bundy went from local Yahoo to a so-called patriot in a matter of days. His instant right-wing celebrity status was thanks to a certain host over on Fox News. After Bundy's first two appearances on Fox, this happened.
Protesters flooded this federal holding pen area aiming to release Cliven Bundy's cattle.
Pushing back up off the gate for right now. Let me work with you and you. I'll allow you two to come in with me. That's it.
It's the people or not, and you guys need to leave.
Push these people back so they can do it safely. I'll give you my honest word right here. I'm going to walk you in so you can negotiate with your father up top.
Walking past armed BLM rangers, the Bundys started talks about releasing the cattle and calming the crowds.
But what I need you to do is to keep this crowd calm, I will do above and below.
The incident commanders agreed to release Bundy's cattle, but say ultimately it's not their call.
A gun battle was narrowly averted. This image of the standoff immediately went viral. It shows a sniper aiming his rifle at federal agents. This is what it's all about, is it not? On Saturday, Bundy told a group of people in Utah God told him to fight a civil war against the feds. He told the group, the Lord told me if the local sheriff doesn't take away these arms from federal agents.
All right. This is the kind of nonsense they're showing on MSNBC, which would explain their very low ratings. However, who watches MSNBC? Who's in charge of the country? Who controls the Senate? And what has happened in politics throughout all history? One side has always sought to eliminate their political opponents once and for all. You notice the Democrats have started getting crazier. People just overlook the fact that all the shooters were liberals. Every time you see an incident, it's a bunch of crazy socialists attacking conservatives. Look at Nancy Pelosi the other night. It wasn't her turn to speak. She just got up and went right over to the other side and started yelling. They're crazy, ladies and gentlemen. Crazy enough to want to eliminate their political opponents. And now Homeland Security, like I said, and we've always told you, I don't want to say this. I don't want to be the one to tell you this. They're saying militias, conservatives, and now you may be thinking, well, in that report they said that the sovereign citizen. They're going to group them in with conservatives, with the real conservatives. That's who was at the Bundy Ranch, the real conservatives. They're gonna say it about Tea Party people. They're going to say it about the Liberty Coalition. They're going to say it about all those people. Real conservatives. What are you going to do to stop it? They have an SS now. They have the brown shirts in place, ladies and gentlemen. You let it happen. What are you going to do when they take that agency and turn it on you? Because they're trying. And we never talk about anything without a solution. And that is to elect the right people to office. And I wanted to talk about tonight, also we're going to talk about the divide in the Republican Party and why I think that is. And you tell me if I'm on to something. I'm going to go over your headlines, and then I'm going to have David Macko on, congressional candidate for the Libertarian Party in the 14th District. Dave joins us often because, Libertarians aren't getting a lot of publicity. The Republicans are scared, and they have good reason to be. Because if you're doing the right thing, in other words, if you're sticking to your Republican principles, you have nothing to fear from the Libertarian Party. The problem is you're not. And a lot of people say to me, well, what's that make you? Are you a Libertarian? No. I've been a Republican all my life. But I'm not going to shut out another party from fair competition. If I'm doing the right thing, what do I have to fear? What's 1% or 2% of the vote? If I'm running in a race, I'm not worried about it. Because I stand for principle. So let me get to the headlines. Ladies and gentlemen, here are your headlines this evening. some videos out of a Saudi family brutally beating a maid, hung her upside down from a hook. To show the little rich, I don't want to say what I wanted to call them, the little rich, you-know-what's, terrorizing a garbage man. This is how these people act over there, ladies and gentlemen. And these slaves have no recourse. They can't do anything about it. VA, Veterans Affairs, officials will get millions of dollars in bonuses under the House-Senate agreement. Mike Huckabee fans revolt after he endorses Lamar Alexander. Israel grants first Golan Heights oil drilling license to Dick Cheney-linked company. Well, the picture's starting to get a little more clear, isn't it? You got Biden's son involved in the oil over in the Ukraine. You got Dick Cheney's company linked to the oil drilling in Golan Heights in Israel. And a congresswoman sees a threat in the Constitution. The head of a gun rights organization is delivering a lesson on the Constitution to a member of Congress. I'm sorry, I can't even believe I'm reading this. Who claimed his statements on the Second Amendment constituted a threat against her. And if you know Larry Pratt, the head of Gun Owners of America, which I happen to believe is better than the National Rifle Association, he's a good man. He's not in any way, shape, or form going to actually threaten a member of Congress. But he says, quote, "Allow me to explain the obvious. I have never encouraged or even suggested that anyone harm anyone. Rather, my speech was designed to educate citizens and politicians that it is the fact that Americans are armed that allows them to resist efforts to be dominated, intimidated, or controlled by politicians." Told the Congresswoman, quote, "Lest you believe that I stand on the fringes of civil society, let me provide you with some other sources for the same principle which I was enunciating." He cited the Declaration of Independence, which states, quote, "Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government." He quoted Frederick Douglass, quote, "A man's rights rest in three boxes, the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box." And he called on the wisdom of John Basil Barnhill, quote, "Where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty." And finally, he quoted Justice Anton Scalia, "When the able-bodied men of the nation are trained in arms and organized, they are better able to resist tyranny." You know, these fruitcakes have lost it. And you know they're socialists, and you know they have something up their sleeve when they find this kind of stuff offensive. Because these are our founding quotes. Men who knew their history, men who knew that government does become tyrannical. And they instructed us exactly what to do and exactly what we should do. Now, I'm not calling for arms. Nobody is. We're simply saying, leave us the hell alone, basically. It's up to you, ladies and gentlemen. the voters, local politicians, to right the wrong. If you want to keep your freedoms, you've got to get these fruitcakes out of there, because they are going to get rid of you, and they're crazy enough to do it. I'm going to get on with the headlines here. Top GOP senator this week is one of the most critical in the history of the republic. The jury awards Jesse Ventura $1.8 million in the defamation case against the deceased American sniper Chris Kyle's estate. The story reads, against his estate. Now, you have the fellow, I don't know where you stand on this, but here's where I stand. I wasn't there. I don't know the story. It doesn't affect my life one single bit. But a man sued another man, not his widow, sued another man because the man supposedly lied about him. Well, the man who sued won. The jury awarded him $1.8 million. So is it the man who sued? Is it his fault that this gentleman died and that he ended up suing the widow's estate? If that's what you think, if you think that's wrong, then you're absolutely part of the problem, I think. You weren't there. I wasn't there. We don't know what happened. But the jury wasn't convinced enough to throw it out. In fact, the jury was convinced that it was a lie. That's all I have to say about that, because it doesn't really concern me at all. I just think it's a little unfair. And do I believe in Jesse Ventura? I don't share any of his beliefs, really. I like his shows, Conspiracy Theory, but I don't, and actually one of those shows was not allowed to be aired again because it showed the camps where they're keeping these children right now. So was he crazy? No. I still don't agree with his political beliefs, but I know he's not crazy. Anyway, moving on. Boehner rules out impeachment. And the top GOP talking point is that this whole scam to impeach the president, they're calling it a scam, was started by Democrats. And so the Republicans said they're not going to impeach Obama, but the media is still talking about impeachment. All right. I really wanted to get into this later. Let me just say, and we will get into it later, Democrats have been running the Republican Party, if you haven't noticed. All of the Democrat talking points are being funneled down from the establishment GOP to their, I don't know what you want to call them, their henchmen. Because there are people in the GOP, ladies and gentlemen, even in your local parties, who just spew the establishment talking points. And that's why people are so angry, because they know it isn't true. They know that they're taking directions from the Democrats. Democrats are telling the Republicans basically how to win. Now, if you were at war, would you show and tell your enemy how to win? And if you were at war, would you take advice from your enemy? Because that's essentially what's happening here, and it doesn't make any bit of sense. Moving on. We're going to get into that. So Jeff Sessions, Senator Jeff Sessions, came out the other day and called the House border bill a, quote, surrender to a lawless president, which he was correct. And Rush Limbaugh, who by the way, had a great couple of shows last week, Thursday and Friday. I don't know if you had a chance to listen, but he was on target. We're going to get into that. Feds quietly dump hundreds of illegal immigrants in Tennessee. Warm water sparks flesh-eating disease warning in Florida. Senator Sessions also warns, is Senator Sessions the only one throwing out the warning? I mean, where's everybody else at? He warns on exceedingly dangerous executive action. Rand Paul teamed up with Booker. Y'all know that story. Scientists say a mass extinction may be underway. The GOP-led House votes to sue Obama because that's going to do anything. His staffers, you know, anybody that works in the White House, they don't have to come to Congress and testify. They're not following any orders by the House. I mean, why would you sue? I mean, what good is that going to do? Congressional report, Ebola biokits deployed to National Guard units in all 50 states. News crews forbidden from filming outside an empty prison. Now people are wondering what is going on there. Ron Paul warns of the dollar collapse being close. Congressman Massey, and we wanted to get this audio because he talked about what I talked about. There's 20-some pages missing from the 9/11 Commission report that were not shown to the public, and people were being called crazy, saying there's more to this story, there's more to this story. And then if you remember the elections, the last elections that we had, even locally, people were being asked, what do you think of the 9/11 thing? Calling them truthers. People lost elections because they dared to say there's more to this story. Now you have Congressman Massey. The Congress was shown the 26 pages. They're not allowed to talk about it. They're trying to declassify these 28 pages. And I told you what it's about. And they're hinting that that's what it's about. And if you didn't listen to the show where I told you what it was about, well, I'm sorry. You're out of the loop. Go look it up. Another win for Monsanto. The U.S. raises allowable levels of the company's pesticide in crops. And now, people in Toledo, Ohio, are without water because of pesticides. Their drinking water is poisonous. But nobody's going to put those two together. Monsanto is going to continue to be allowed to do whatever it is that they're doing, according to the reports. And, life will go on. I also want to get this audio. Like I said, excuse me. Like I said, we've been having trouble getting the audio. Something happened. I'm trying to figure it out. We're going to get it. This is hard work. Socialists attack Danny Shine and Luke Radowski. Then they run to police. And that's what these crazy fruitcakes do. They flip out on you. They yell at you. They hit you. They slap you, punch you, kick you. And then they run over to police and say that you're doing it. Happens every time. So one Ebola-infected American is here, and another one is coming in tomorrow. And we're going to talk about that. Here's another headline. Judge to FBI. Explain what happened to missing Oklahoma City bombing videos. Because just like Lois Lerner, the surveillance video was disappeared. And I know I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. Call me crazy whenever something bad happens and the video just all of a sudden disappears. The sheep don't question it, but I question everything. CNN anchor, another socialist fruitcake, tweets, "You willfully ignorant FUCK sticks." Attaboy. Cops break 10-year-old boy's leg for filming him. Sexually assault his mother. This story is so bad, I didn't even know if I wanted to read it on air. But here it is. It's a little African-American boy. His mother is African-American. I say black. People say African-American. Whatever. Courtney Silvera was eating his breakfast cereal when cops began knocking at the door. The cops were looking for Courtney's mother's ex-boyfriend in connection to violating a protection order. According to the complaint, the cops began pounding on the front door, at which point the situation began to spiral out of control. Courtney's grandmother, who was suffering from a brain and lung cancer, opened the door and had a hard time understanding the cops' reasoning for being there. This brave little child, curious of what was going on, grabbed his mother's cell phone and began filming the incident, which you have the right to do. The police had to come to our house before, due to the other complaint, and he's fascinated by police. He looks up to them, Silvera said. But the cop apparently didn't like being recorded and began assaulting the child, according to the lawsuit. "I heard my son screaming, 'You can't do that. You're hurting me. Don't hit me,' she said." The mother had been upstairs getting her 5-year-old daughter ready for school. She bolted downstairs into the fray, dressed in her underclothes, and was grabbed by a cop who pulled her outside in the freezing cold, the suit alleges. While Silvera was being restrained, her breast popped out of her bra, revealing a pierced nipple. The officer, according to her, flicked the piercing. "He flicked the ring up with his finger on my right breast," she said. He said, "Is this what mothers look like these days? My neighbors saw me naked. It was degrading. I can deal with the embarrassment of what the police did to me in front of my neighbors, but the hardest thing to explain is to explain it to my kids, that not all police are bad." Which she's right. Not all police are bad. And what transpired, according to the lawsuit, may not even have happened. But all of this could have been avoided if the child was allowed to videotape the officer. Which, like I said, you have the right to do. So none of this would have ever come into question. And that's why I'm for officers wearing cameras. I don't think they should have the ability to turn them on and off. I think they should be on at all times. They should be issued at the station, turned on by whoever's in charge, and turned off at the end of the shift. And I don't care if you have to hire somebody to go over the film that night on third shift. I don't really care. But I don't think they should have the power to turn on and off. Anyway, moving on. I think we're going to get Dave on. We're going to get Dave on now. I'm not going to go over these headlines without him. And I don't want him staying up too late tonight. So let's get Dave on right now. Dave, welcome to the show, and thanks for patiently waiting.
Thank you. I can hang on until midnight.
All right. Sounds good. So any of those
regarding
headlines
the police cameras.
Go ahead, Dave.
Regarding the police cameras, it should further be a law that if their cameras go off at any time, whoever they're accusing of anything should be considered as innocent. That should be evidence in court of the innocence of anyone being accused by the police, unless a bullet goes through the camera. And the bullet's not a bullet from a weapon that with the caliber that the police don't use.
Right. Well, we're looking for a new co-host, Dave. Mike cannot do it anymore. He was threatened, apparently, for comments he had made against a candidate, and we'll leave it at that.
Well, we live in a strange world. Speaking of candidates, if everyone who's listening should have paper and pen, because I'm going to give my website out in a few minutes.
Are you allowing them time to get their pen and paper out?
I'm urging them to. I'm encouraging them to.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, the website is mackoforliberty.org, MackoForLiberty.org, and it has my new 2014 campaign literature. If anyone wants a hard copy of it, just send me a note at Macko for Liberty, Post Office Box 39233, Solon, Ohio 44139. I am very proud of this literature. It's one of the difficult pieces of material that I've ever written. Do you know how hard it is to fit in the Impeach Obama section into one page of a 4-page flyer? Try that sometime.
I think one of our representatives rambled off something like over 1,000 offenses.
That sounds right.
I wish I could remember who that was and where it was.
I bet if we looked at 1,000 offenses on the internet, it would show up.
Right.
Also, in announcements, on Saturday, September 13th at 1 p.m., I will be in beautiful downtown Andover in Ashtabula County, where the Andover Tea Party is holding its annual rally. Some other candidates will be there, including Sarah Fowler, the candidate for the State Board of Education, who's done so much good to expose Common Core, or Obama Core. Also that same day, about 45 minutes southeast, at the Brandy Springs Park in Mercer, Pennsylvania, Michael Badnarik, the Libertarian candidate for president 10 years ago, 2004, will be speaking at a U.S. Constitution event. The 13th is near the anniversary of September 17th, when the founders finished writing the Constitution in 1787. So that might be of interest to people.
Now, Dave, I don't mean this. I'm not trying to lob these people in with you. Just forewarning. But I'm sure you tend to talk to, being a libertarian, you tend to talk to a lot more so-called sovereign citizens than I do. What do you think about that report that I played earlier?
If that was before 10:45, I missed it. The enemy is trying to paint the sovereign citizens as somehow dangerous and subversive, and the ones I've met have been mostly good people who are concerned about our country, concerned about restoring our liberty. It's a good rule of thumb, usually, if the enemy attacks somebody, he's doing something right.
So what do you think about my predictions of kind of lobbing them in with the Tea Party and the Liberty Coalition and other conservatives?
Well, this is a smear to discredit any opponents of our communist dictator, Barack Obama. They're campaigning also against impeaching him by trying to play mind games with the Republicans that it'll hurt the Republicans if they impeach him. First of all, I don't believe that. If you recall, the ancient Romans had a saying, "Let justice be done though the heavens fall." That's true, of course, but I think it's more important that if justice is not done, then the heavens will fall, which is why I promised that if I am elected, I will propose to impeach Barack Hussein Obama for murder, war crimes, treason, and attempts to destroy the Constitution and establish a dictatorship.
So let's talk about, and I'm kind of glad you're here, Dave, because, well, it's always nice to have you on, but on this particular night.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. You know that. But I really want to talk about my main subject tonight is the divide in the Republican Party. And was there one point in time in your life when you were a Republican?
Yes, 50 years ago. Before 1971, 18-year-olds were not allowed to vote. So I couldn't vote in 1960. Otherwise, I would have voted for Richard Nixon, and then I couldn't say my hands are clean. Yes, 50 years ago, Barry Goldwater was running for president, and I was old enough to vote, and so I voted for Barry Goldwater, even though the enemy said that if we voted for Goldwater, there would be rioting in the streets and war in Vietnam, and the enemy was right, but it was Lyndon Johnson, one of the acolytes of Franklin Roosevelt, cursed be his name, who actually got us into the Vietnam War, accelerated it, and caused the rioting in the streets. Yes, I know many good people such as yourself have had the stomach and fortitude to stick with the Republican Party. I have to confess I did not have so much stomach and fortitude. And when I watched how the Republican establishment stabbed Barry Goldwater in the back, I became revulsed against it, and from then on I was in the American Party until 1980 when it dissolved, and since then I've been a libertarian. And of course I've been watching the Republican Party for 50 years and studying it, and there are good people in the Republican Party, people like Barry Goldwater, people like Robert Taft, and of course now the greatest living American statesman, Ron Paul. And almost uniformly, here a local example, Matt Lynch, who ran against our neocon misrepresentative David Joyce, who now has a 48% pro-Constitution voting record in the New American Magazine's voting index. Now, the tendency of the Republican Party has always been, whenever a patriot leader stood up, to knife him in the back and drive him out. They're more interested in getting rid of the patriots within their party than fighting the Democrats. The latest example was in Mississippi, where Thad Cochran, the neocon senator, actually urged the Democrats to meddle in the Republican Party against the Patriot candidate. So it's totally rotten. And again, as I've said many times before, if you do get fed up with the Republican Party, you do have another home in the Libertarian Party.
Well, I appreciate that. So, and this is what you're seeing from the outside, and this is what other people are seeing. How come the people in the party don't see it? How come they don't see the talking points being handed down by the establishment? The only people that seem to see it are the Tea Party people, the Liberty coalitions, those people sticking with the party.
Well, getting back to writing campaign literature, the most difficult thing about proofreading is a natural tendency that we all have. We all see what we expect to see or what we want to see. And the Republicans want to see that they're in a party with patriotic, decent leaders. And they're willing to go to almost any length to ignore the fact that's not true. Most of their leadership is totally corrupt and evil. Look what they did to Ron Paul in 2008 and 2012. Look what they did to Matt Lynch up in the 14th district just a few months ago. I've met a lot of Matt Lynch supporters while I've been campaigning, and I tell them that it's not healthy to be angry. You know, it's bad for your heart, it's bad for your circulation. So I tell them, don't get angry, get even. And the best way to get even is vote for me.
Now, a lot of people are going to say, and you already know what I'm going to say. So let's see how clairvoyant you are in reading my mind. What do you think people will say?
You're throwing your vote as though they're voting on a horse race. So they're betting on some nag running around an oval track. It's not a horse race. It's your opportunity to send a message, first of all to the government, second of all to the party, third of all to the people, but of where you stand and what you don't want and what you do want. Now, if you do want World War III and a police state and an economic crash, well, keep voting Republican, keep voting Democrat. Doesn't make any difference. If you want to impeach Barack Hussein Obama, if you want to restore our free enterprise system and get out of the Depression, if you want to end the police state where 300 million Americans are spied upon by the NSA, which obviously indicates they regard the American people as the enemy, and I regard myself as their enemy. And if you want World War III, if you don't want World War III, then vote for me. Vote Libertarian wherever you have a chance.
How would you sway the Democrat vote?
I am the only peace candidate running for Congress in Northeast Ohio. Honest liberals who oppose the World War III that appears to be coming, not only Russia versus Ukraine, Israel versus Palestine, China versus Japan, and the Philippines and Taiwan. As I said, I am the only peace candidate for Congress in Northeast Ohio. Secondly, there are some honest liberals who are concerned about civil rights, and the fact is that many innocent people are put in prison because of the horrible drug laws, and some people, of course, are concerned that this does affect minority groups excessively, which it does. So Rand Paul has been working with Cory Booker, the Democrat senator from New Jersey, about imprisonment rates for people. You know, the United States has more people in prison now than Red China, and they're 5 times our population. That's horrible. That's a sign of a police state. That's obvious proof that something is wrong. So I do hope that some honest Democrat liberals, since there will be no Green candidate in the race this time. She is running for state representative in Humboldt County, and to be honest about it, unless the Republican or in the most rare situation the Democrat, we're standing for some principles. If I didn't have a Libertarian candidate to vote for or a Constitution Party candidate, I might vote Green Party candidate just as a protest, just as a way to knock down the establishment parties. And if any Green Party members listening to us tonight, I hope you take the same opportunity. You know, vote for me. Like I said in 2008 at the City Club, how can we do worse? Now, I wouldn't say that this year. I would be more positive. I'd say we can do better. Oh, speaking of the City Club of Cleveland, if there's anybody out there listening to us who has any contacts at all with the City Club, tell them to return to their principles as the citadel of free speech, as they were in 2008, when I spoke at the City Club, which you can still see on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in City Club Macko, and tell them not to be the dung heap of political correctness as they were in 2012, when I was not invited to speak, when only half of the candidates on the ballot were given the opportunity to speak, and the least interesting of them also.
Right. I believe you got a lot of applause and laughs last time you were there.
Yes, I did. And if you, I'm not totally objective about this, but I think I did a good job. I think that's why they didn't let me on again. The former head of the City Club said I had nothing to offer, and I consider that a slander. Also, he never explained why they didn't invite Elaine Master-Mateo, who was the Green Party candidate in our race, or Sean Stipe, the Libertarian candidate in the 9th Congressional District, or Scott Rupert, who was the independent candidate for the U.S. Senate, who made a lot of good sense. So they're just total frauds. The fraud who headed the City Club at that time has retired or gone to his reward or something. So hopefully there might be new leadership, honest leadership, like they had in 2008. And if there is honest leadership, I look forward to being at the City Club. And hopefully if enough people make it known that I should be on, maybe they'll return to their principles and show better sense.
Well, Dave, I don't plan on running for Congress anytime soon, so I don't think you and I would ever be political opponents. Basically, what we're doing here, ladies and gentlemen, is we're pointing out the reasons for the divide in the Republican Party. And also at the same time, Dave, you're promoting your candidacy, which I allow you to do freely. But I cater to the Republican audience because I am a Republican, and I believe, and I don't expect you to help me remedy this problem. I wouldn't ask that of you. But there is a problem. You would agree with that, right, Dave?
Of course there's a problem, and for the Republicans who are listening, the best way to straighten out your leadership right now is to vote for me. Show them you're not happy with your own leadership, and they've got to do a better job of promoting candidates who represent your principles. There's a few issues on which I disagreed with Matt Lynch, but we were about 80% in agreement. And if I hadn't been running, I certainly would have voted for him. And I told him that if he had won the primary, I would have made him look moderate. I would have. Did you? Another interesting thing. I chose not to meddle in the affairs of the Republican Party in the primary. However, my Democrat opponent, Michael Wager, who either is or used to run the Cleveland Port Authority, actually went out and told the Republicans how to vote, that they should vote for the incumbent. I consider that rather odd. If your opponent is telling you to do something, that I'm going to assume that that's not good for you to do. That's just a basic gut feeling.
Right, and that's what we covered. And you know what else? I talked to a lot of Republicans this weekend. And from what I'm hearing, there are a lot of Democrats in the Republican Party. They've been infiltrated. And I guess that's the reasoning for what's going on here, because a lot of Democrats are saying, a lot of so-called Republicans are saying in this local county race, and I think you know which one I'm talking about, the commissioner's race, that they're going to vote for the Democrat. Now, how is that a good Republican if you're going to go out and vote for the Democrat? Now, I could see voting for the Libertarian candidate because you have the same beliefs, pretty much. I mean, Libertarians and Republicans are not that far apart.
Well, we do what they say they're going to do. Present company excluded.
But we had this talk before that, you know, Libertarians, for the most part, are disgruntled Republicans.
Many did come from the Republican Party that when they saw they were being sold out, that the Republican Party leadership did not adhere to principles of liberty or to the Constitution, yes.
You know, I had a family member, and I'm not at liberty to say who, that was sworn into the Army today. And I was there, and when they gave their oath, they swore to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. And every time I hear that, I get a little choked up. Because people are after money. They want to make deals. If a candidate brings money to the county, that's all anybody cares about. They don't care the principle adhering to our Constitution, protecting our rights, things of that nature, and I think that both appeals to Republicans and Democrats and Libertarians. Am I right?
Well, if I'm elected, I promise to bring liberty as much as I can. I will never vote to increase taxes or fees. I will never vote for new taxes or fees. I believe in balancing the budget or trying to, but I'll never do it by raising taxes or paying the debt through inflation. I will always work to restore liberty, to restrict government to its proper function of protecting the life, liberty, and property of people. For example, one of the most difficult things next to squeezing the impeach Obama section into under one page when I wrote this year's campaign literature, the same as the other years, was to find synonyms for abolish, repeal, defund. So I finally quit. I just used abolish, repeal, and defund all of the government programs which are unconstitutional and which are working to destroy the American people and wreck our economy so we can be merged into a one-world government. So.
What would you say to the people that say, and obviously they have a good point. Some Republicans are going to say that, you know, if they were to vote, if people in the party were to vote Libertarian, well, then the Democrat would win. And obviously we know that could very well happen. Now, what are you counting on? What are you hoping will happen, and what are your thoughts on that?
The only time that you they're saying that people who vote Libertarian or vote for someone who believes in the Constitution are throwing their votes away. The only time you throw your vote away is when you vote for someone who does not believe as you believe. If you're happy with a 48% pro-Constitution voting rate, then vote for the incumbent. If you want someone who will adhere to the Constitution 100% and will not compromise, will not yield principles or truth, then vote for me.
Well, Dave, I have a caller, and we like to get to all the callers. And I want to, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know what the caller's ever going to say, so be prepared.
I'll be glad to.
Be prepared for anything.
I'll be glad to answer anything. Can we stay on after midnight?
We will be on until 12:30.
Oh, 12:30. So, okay, very good.
So let me get this caller on the air right now and see what they have to say. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Q. I'm here in Atlanta. Question for you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
No one is ever able to answer my question. They either get mad or they spin it away. What is your view, gentlemen, of how hard I see Republicans have fought for the past 5 years to take our jobs and send them over to India and help that economy get better and allow them to come over and get American jobs? And what is your take on it, gentlemen?
Well, I'll tell you, my guest tonight, if you haven't been listening, is a Libertarian candidate. So I'm going to let him answer that for you.
The economy was the strongest in the world. We were able to compete anywhere in the world, and we can do that again if we get rid of organizations like the EPA, if we get rid of OSHA, get rid of all the government regulations and reduce all of the taxes which are making it so burdensome for businesses to be established here and to run here. Are also programs whereby the government has actually financed companies that are going abroad. Now that is crazy. The government shouldn't meddle in financing any businesses, but it certainly shouldn't pay them to go abroad. We need to restrict the government to its proper role of protecting the lives, liberty, and property of the people. When that happens, we'll get out of the Depression. We'll have prosperity as we've never seen before for 100 years. We need to repeal the federal income tax. We need to either get rid of the corporation tax entirely or at least reduce it to the same level as the rest of the world. That is how America can compete again. That is how we can restore liberty and prosperity. Does that answer your question?
Here's a follow. You did. Here's a follow-up question to what you just said. So, respectfully, we need to keep helping businesses with these things that you suggested because they can't do them on their own. Prior to a lot of these things, they were doing just fine. So I don't understand how we need to help them. Can you explain that?
So-called helping businesses, it's not the government's responsibility to help businesses. It's the government's responsibility to stay out of the way. That way, businesses which provide services and products that people want will prosper. They won't be driven out of the country. Also, for many of the foreign countries, we provide them with foreign aid. We defend them with our troops. They pay for their own defense. That way we can compete better with them. We should bring all of our troops home now, not only because it's a welfare program for foreign countries, but because the meddling is going to bring us into World War III.
Okay, I'm going to bow out, but I
caller, I have a question for you, real quick.
Go ahead.
You're from Atlanta, you said?
I'm originally from California, but I just happen to be living in Atlanta.
Okay. Were you able to vote in this primary down there?
Yeah.
Did you happen to vote for my good friend, Minister Derek Grayson?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. He's a good man, and I hope he runs again.
Well, I didn't see him in my district. Maybe that's why. So I.
Well, he ran for Senate, so he would be in your district. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I don't recall seeing his name. Maybe that's why. Because we had people on the ballot who I was unfamiliar with, and I'm registered as a conservative, and I get conservative emails. I never got anything, but I'm also in Twitter land as a Democrat, so I get Democrat information. So I just don't remember seeing it.
Well, then you make better informed decisions, by being in the middle.
Yeah, it's always good to get a lot of information, and that's why I came on and asked my question tonight. And I'm going to bow out by saying this. Here's the unfortunate thing I see Republicans do. It's very un-American that I think that they do. They have a lust to do things so globally that it actually hurts the infrastructure of America itself. I think if, in the case for someone said call centers the other day, and they were using that example, and they said, well, we didn't need those jobs anyway. And I'm like, but there's nothing to replace them. But this is the mentality of the gentleman I was speaking with. He's a professor of econ, and we didn't need those jobs anyway. But you didn't replace them with anything.
He said that.
Ooh, yeah, he's a Republican.
We don't need jobs. We need jobs. We've got these trade agreements.
I didn't even argue with him. I didn't even argue with him because it was an asinine statement. But his spin was, well, we didn't need those types of jobs anyway. And I said, dude, those jobs actually are the jobs that college kids went to get ahead before they went to their real job. Those jobs are the jobs that a 40-year-old guy fell back on, along with a security job if he had a hard time in between jobs. That's what those jobs were. So you've given that away to save $2. You've infused India with a lot of money. They've created a middle class, and now those middle class people have moved over with no true regard for America. Now, I'm not saying, everybody's like that, but majority of people that come from certain lands, they're not America first. They're just here to exploit America and leave, just like the kid who did the Boston bombing thing. His parents, they came from Russia. They exploited everything, EBT. They got welfare. They got everything they could, and then they went back.
So, you looking for a co-host job because it doesn't pay anything?
Well, let me.
I'm looking for a co-host. Think it over.
Yeah, I'll think it over. Well, thank you, gentlemen. You take care.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
Oh, wow, Dave. That was great.
He was quite well informed.
Yeah.
Part of this is the move to destroy the American economy so that we can be merged into a one-world government. This has been going on a long, long time. It's accelerated now. But it's not only Obama who's doing it. Bush did it. Clinton did it. Even Reagan did it. It's been going on a very long time. Unless we free our country, we're going to go into depression and stay in a depression.
Well, where I work, and I'm not going to disclose where I work at a very large corporation. And when I talk to customers, they say they call customer service, and they're talking to somebody in Asia or India. And I always say, well, here's my card, call me, and you could talk to an American. And they're always so happy to hear that. These companies are making a fortune, and they don't understand. We need the jobs right here. We have Americans that can do that. And I can see on the Republican side where the companies are all about profit, and I wish we had John Plechnik on the line because he is a law professor at Cleveland State, and he explained to the audience that these large corporations pay themselves $1 a year. So they don't pay anything in taxes. And they're making a killing hand over fist by creating these jobs in other countries that Americans would normally do. And I think they're afraid that Americans would become unionized and all this other stuff. There's really, what is there to worry about, Dave?
One important thing is, again, to realize that part of a definite plan to reduce our standard of living, the way to end the depression, to end the disproportionate weights against us, is to get rid of the income tax, to pass the Liberty Amendment, to reduce or get rid of the corporate taxes. And again, you mentioned how some of the top executives of the big companies will strive to pay as little taxes as possible, or no taxes at all. This is why when you have a huge, complicated tax system, it works to the benefit of the large companies and the very wealthy people who can hire the lawyers to find the loopholes which they have encouraged the politicians to create in the tax laws. That's why we need to get rid of the income tax, why we need to reduce the corporate tax, or eventually get rid of it too.
Think about it this
way.
way.
Of course, the death tax and the gift tax.
All these executives have bodyguards. They run around in armored cars. They hired, I actually know guys who do this, who protect executives. And it's big business.
Well, I don't blame them. If I did some of the things they're doing, I probably would want to have a bodyguard around me too.
They don't live in the inner cities where people are poor. They tend to live far away from everybody else, and because that's where they feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
But they never think that if everyone is able to have a good job, middle class income, afford a nice house with a picket fence, that there won't be any crime. You wouldn't have to worry about it. Well, you might have a little bit of crime, but I mean, if everybody's getting paid, you're not going to have as much crime.
Of course.
But that would make too much sense.
Of course, if the American people wake up, they may need those bodyguards.
Well, the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, that we're not electing the right people. We're either Democrats or we're Republicans. The establishment from both parties sends down the talking points. They talk to the people underneath them. You hear it on the TV. Everything is manufactured, and that's what you know. This gentleman was very informed. He knows what's going on. Now all he has to do is tell 10 friends what's going on and find the right candidate. Mm-hmm. If we all were to do that, if we all had our own minds, and that's the divide in the Republican Party right now, the establishment is pushing back against the people that are informed, and they're doing a good job of it too. I'm so angry sometimes I just lose my place. It's pathetic. And I don't know how anybody can believe these talking points. Dave?
Well, they've been brainwashed by the establishment media. They've also been brainwashed by their government schools. And it's and again, with the economy declining, many people are in a rat race just to stay above water. Just to bring enough money in so they have food on the table and a roof over their heads. So when they finish doing that, they don't have enough time or energy to study how they're being attacked and enslaved. Fortunately, there is alternative media now, much more than there used to be, even 20 years ago. Well, for example, Blog Talk Radio.
Right. But you have to figure how long is that going to even be around? If we are thought of as terrorists, which is what they're pushing now, mm-hmm. The conservatives are the people of the masses are being told that the conservatives more and more are the homegrown terrorists, which is what the DHS was set up to get rid of.
That's why we need to abolish. That's why we need to abolish the DHS.
But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless you get the right people in office. It's a monstrosity. It's another bureaucracy that's going to continue to grow. It's only a few years old, and look at all the money they're throwing at it. And look what they're doing. Here's a story right here. Check this out. DHS raids a private home and seizes a car for violating EPA regulations. The Department of Homeland Security acts every day more like an autocratic government endowed with superpowers beyond anything ever imagined by the men who framed our government. Consider a disturbing report filed by Washington Times on August 1st about a DHS raid on a private residence in South Carolina to seize a car that couldn't pass the EPA muster. Jennifer Brinkley said she saw a line of law enforcement vehicles approaching her home and wondered what was wrong, the local WBTV reported. Homeland Security agents then went to her 1985 Land Rover and lifted the hood. They popped up the hood and looked at the vehicle identification number and compared it with a piece of paper and then took the car with them. Didn't tell her where they were taking it, just took it. My God, Dave, what is going on here?
It's an obvious attempt to set up a police state. But remember, 218 members of the House of Representatives could defund the DHS, put it out of business immediately. They could defund the EPA, which wasn't even, well, first of all, it's totally unconstitutional, even if Congress had voted to create it. But if you will recall, it was created by executive order by Richard Nixon, and there should be no executive orders, of course. But the way to stop all of these things is to have 218 patriots in the Federal House of Representatives, backed up by state legislatures, which will nullify unconstitutional federal laws, and which, of course, will stop the state copycats from setting up little police states in each of the 50 states. This is what can do it if the American people become informed enough to demand that their representatives do that.
You know the race you mentioned earlier about McDaniel?
Yes.
McDaniel's people now say that they have evidence that shows that he won. But here's the problem. It's going to be up to the state to determine whether or not he won. And how do you think that's going to turn out?
If the state government is corrupt as it is in most places, it's not going to work out very well. But again, the people of the state of Mississippi elections can be manipulated, but usually it's only the closer elections. If there's an overwhelming 65 or 70% of people who are fed up, it's harder to manipulate that. And of course, if it gets manipulated at that point, I think there's a quote that a lot of good patriots use, and I think it was from John F. Kennedy, interestingly enough, that if you don't allow lawful dissent anymore, then you're going to have the other kind.
Right. There's another Homeland Security story. Feds take up Expendables 3 leak probe after Lionsgate files a lawsuit. I thought Homeland Security was for potential terrorism, and now they're going after people who are leaking movies.
Well, you don't understand. They're terrorized that the American people will wake up. So they all of what they're doing is treating us as terrorists. That's why they should be budgeted zero, and every one of their officers who committed a crime should be put on trial. I've said in the past that I would never vote for any new government bureaucracy, but I think we need a new federal prison on some Pacific island somewhere, maybe in the Aleutians.
Well, like Reagan,
that would be appropriate.
Like Reagan said, this is the last stand. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. If this country falls, there's nowhere else to go. And you got all these, in my party, I talk about my party because I can. I'm a Republican. I've always been a Republican. I'm always going to be a Republican. No offense. But I hear people constantly, they're spying on the new people coming into the party. They're doing everything that the establishment wants them to do. And Alex Jones brought up a good point today. He talked about Ernst Röhm, the Nazi lover, the guy that killed 50,000 people in one night. Remember that guy? And then
he was purged.
And then he was killed
Hitler.
because and Alex Jones brought up a good point. And as he was being killed, he says, "Heil Hitler. I love you, Hitler, my cupcake," or whatever he called him, because he was gay. But he did whatever they wanted him to do, and then he was killed for it.
Orders.
Because listen, guys, if you think that these guys want traitors on their side, which is essentially what you are when you do what you do, when you spy on other Republicans. You're essentially being a traitor to your own party. And the establishment, after a while, they're not going to want you around anymore. You've served your purpose. You're a useful idiot when you do things like that.
Well, Robert, would you want a traitor at your back?
Hell no.
No. So they get they deserve.
That's right.
They get what they deserve, even for the decent people.
But what I'm saying is that it's a warning. Don't be one of those people, because they're not going to keep you around once they do what it is they're trying to do. And they are bringing in a new world order, Dave, and people think we're crazy for saying it. But look at what the Homeland Security is doing right now. They're purging. Here's the story. Where's the story? Let me find it. Hang on one second. Oh, my gosh. Where did it go? What was it? 550. Here it is. The Army to force out 550 majors. Some are in Afghanistan. Here's the story. This is from Stripes.com. So it's legitimate. In Washington, about 550 Army majors, including some serving in Afghanistan, will soon be told they have to leave the service by next spring as part of a budget-driven downsizing of service. And they're going to blame that on the Republicans. They're going to say, well, the Republicans didn't pass this bill. And the Republicans are playing right into their hands, because the Republicans are doing everything that the Democrats want. And then the Republicans will turn around. Remember when the Democrats said, well, we didn't vote to impeach Bush, but they did. And the lady that co-hosted it, or co-sponsored the bill, I'm thinking about my co-host. I need a new co-host. But the lady that co-sponsored the bill stood up and said, we never tried to impeach Bush.
That's a lie.
Exactly. And then the Republicans play their game. Republicans voted to fund Obamacare, and the Democrats still go after them. So listen, it's not that Republicans are dumb.
Yeah.
As far as establishment goes, it's that they know exactly what they're doing. You have it on both sides. They are giving you up to this new world order, whoever controls it. We don't know. Dave, maybe you know.
I'm not sure. I have some suspicions.
But essentially, that's what they want to do.
It's either Illuminati, Zionist, or Satan.
And we're called crazy for even mentioning it. But think about it. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, the world is crazy.
Think about this. Why would the Republicans take advice from Democrats? And then when the Democrats turn on them, why would they then continue to do it? And why would the Republicans say that the Democrats came up with a plan to impeach Obama, to say that the Republicans wanted to impeach Obama to win the election? How does that even work? That's not going to work. Because the Republicans don't want to impeach Obama. Right?
Well, let me just say that impeaching Obama is an excellent idea. I believe it needs to be done because as long as there are no consequences for acts of treason by our president, the situation will continue to get worse and worse. For that matter, Bush should have been impeached. The Democrats who were working to impeach him were doing the right thing. Maybe not for all the right reasons, but they were doing the right thing.
But here's what I'm saying. The Republicans have no intention of impeaching Obama because Obama's doing his job. He's doing what his handlers want him to do. And the Republicans know this, and they're going along with it. And in order to please their constituents, they're saying, well, the Democrats are doing this. They came up with the plan. They're the ones saying we should impeach Obama. And clearly, that's not the case. You follow me so far?
Head around the political maneuvering and go back to basic principles. The basic principle is Congress is actually required to try to remove a president who's committed high crimes and misdemeanors, including treason and war crimes and murder. So it's the right thing to do. Whether it's politically expedient or not, it's the right thing to do. I happen to think that it really is politically expedient too. There was a poll last week which said 1/3 of all American voters, the people cared enough to try to see what's going on, wanted to impeach Obama. Even 1/5 of the Democrats, according to this poll. I forget which one it is. You could, if you have a computer close by, you could bring it up on your computer. But it's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. It's the constitutional thing to do. And if I were to be elected, if enough of the people of the 14th District were to wake up, that's what I would do.
Right. So let me ask you a question. I'm in many forums, and I have a Democrat asking, why does the GOP run on the basis that they will create jobs? She says that government can incentivize job creation and further create real jobs with funding much-needed infrastructure bills. How are we to compete in the 21st century when our roads, bridges, airports, and electric grid are falling apart?
Some of these programs are unconstitutional. They make work. The government cannot create jobs except by getting out of the way and letting entrepreneurs create them. You have the closest thing to government creating jobs is when you reduce the taxes to the bare minimum, when you reduce the regulations and bureaucracy to the bare minimum. When we had that, especially during the 1800s and toward the end of the 1800s, we prospered. We became the most prosperous, richest nation in the world. And it led to creativity, the invention of the electric light, the automobile, the airplane, the telephone, all these things. In 1800, we were worse off than the third world country today. By 1900, we reached the modern industrial age, which greatly benefited the, quote, common people, unquote.
So we did all that without the government building all of the infrastructure, correct?
Correct. I wish the automobile had been invented in the 1790s instead of the 1890s. If the automobile had come into existence when Washington and Jefferson and Franklin and Madison were alive, I don't think we'd have driver's licenses or license plates, and I think we would have had some private road system. Now with the socialized road system, it'll take a lot of time and effort to translate it back to freedom. A libertarian economist and philosopher, Walter Block, has written a good book on the subject, and I purchased it. I skimmed through it, but it seems as though there would be a long transition to put it into effect. But I could see the need for federal control of some federal financing of roads during the Cold War. There were large armies that could have invaded the United States through Mexico or through Alaska and Canada. And of course, the Constitution does authorize post roads, but I don't even think the federal government should control the post office anymore. The Constitution says the Congress shall have power to set up the post office. It doesn't mean it has to. There's very few mandates by the Constitution to tell Congress things that they have to do, and one of them, of course, is to protect our borders from invasion, and they don't do that. So even the roads, the other infrastructure, would probably be, if it has to be handled by government at any level, would probably be better at the state level or at the local level. That way there'd be less graft and corruption. Why send money to Washington, D.C. and then send it back? It's like having a transfusion from your right arm to your left arm with a leaky tube where a lot of the blood leaks out. Hope that's not too graphic for our listeners. It's how the government works.
Right. Well, I agree with you on that. I mean, now with these huge bureaucracies and there's so much government control now of everything, you have to count on the government for certain things now, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't have to. Basically,
well,
what you're saying.
Money in taxes. Yeah.
Right, and now, who would take care of the infrastructure if, let's say, we didn't take in so much tax, as the federal government didn't take in so much tax? Who would then be responsible for that?
Well, at the very least, it should go to the states. Ideally, it goes first to the local government, and then individual private entrepreneurs. Although there might be difficulties in having 15 interstates from Cleveland to Columbus. It's probably more than you need. And again, there have to be some regulations so that I'm against, for example, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. You shouldn't tell a restaurant owner who he has to serve in his restaurant, or a hotel owner who he has to serve in his hotel. But it might be necessary.
That makes you racist, Dave.
Pardon?
You're a racist.
Thank you, Bob. I'm honored by your compliment. I'm just not going to respond to. You're supposed to respond to that by cringing and say, "Oh no, I'm not a racist." I would never, if I were elected, I would never pass any law to harm any person on the basis of race or religion. And I do believe everyone should be equal before the law. But on the other hand, I think the white race should survive. Why is it okay if you're trying to preserve whales from extinction or snail darters from extinction, but if you're trying to prevent the white race from being extinguished, that's racist and wrong. This whole term racist is a mental war against white people. Obama has made a high or low art of it. If Obama were a white man, he would have been impeached 5 years ago.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
Oh, it certainly is.
People bring race into everything, because at the end of the day, we're all Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Americans need jobs. Americans need to have less money taken out of their paychecks. Americans need to be represented. And that's something you're just not hearing. It's either you're keeping the black man down, or you're racist because you won't let illegal immigrants into the country. Well, wait a minute. They can come in. Anybody can come into the country, but they have to do it the right way. They have to assimilate. What is racist about that? Why do black people still feel the need that they have to have an individual representation?
Well, it's even worse than that. If black people had real, authentic leadership, they would be in the forefront of opposing immigration, because immigration just provides more low-level, lower-paying jobs, more competition for them. Another thing would be they would be opposed to any form of gun control, especially those who have to live in the inner cities where the criminals always have guns and where the honest people find it very difficult to get guns to protect themselves. So this is totally fraudulent, the fraudulent leadership. The same as with the female libers. I don't even want to call them women or claim they're working for liberation. An honest women's liberation movement would be at the forefront of opposition to gun control. They'd outdo the gun owners of America.
You know what? Even in this, and I bring up again this commissioner race here in this county. You know, you have women attacking this very intelligent woman, saying she has no credibility because, and that she has no experience being a commissioner. Who has experience being a commissioner before they get elected to be commissioner? Dave?
Nobody.
Exactly right. Why does our Constitution say the only qualifications for being a representative are what? You have to be of age.
25, citizen 7 years, and live in the state you're being elected from.
That's it. And there's a reason for that. Because you don't need qualifications. And you have all these people out there arguing, say, well, what qualifies you? What qualifies you? Well, nothing really, because I've never been a county commissioner before.
Because I do think I'm the best qualified candidate for Congress in this race.
But why is that, Dave? But you have better. You do have qualifications. There you go. You're about to say.
I've read the Constitution.
And
I've read the Constitution.
And you know it like the back. You know it like the back of your hand, right? And you understand it. You've read the Federalist Papers. You've read the Anti-Federalist Papers.
Yes, and they were prophets, especially the people who wrote the Anti-Federalist Papers. Everything they said came true because the people weren't vigilant.
And could it be said that those same qualifications will qualify you for any city council position, commissioner?
Sure.
State representative?
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be first and foremost. I want to know. I can't wait to run for something, because when somebody says I'm not qualified, I'm going to ask them to recite a certain part of the Constitution and see if they can. That's that'll make up my mind.
I keep telling intelligent, well-informed people such as yourself that you should run for public office. It's the one opportunity in your life. to vote for the perfect candidate. Someone you can trust completely, someone you know will never stab you in the back, someone whose knowledge and understanding and wisdom are beyond question, namely yourself. And you do have to choose between modesty and honesty when you run for office, and I have chosen honesty rather than modesty.
Dave, what can we do?
Well, if you run for Congress, you can take some of my literature from this year or 2012 or 2008 and just put your picture where mine is and your biographical information where mine is, and you're all set. Now, the impeach Obama section won't be relevant by 2016.
Well, you never know.
Late by then. Yeah.
You never know. With the Ebola coming into the country, he could very well still be president.
Constitution says that he has 2 terms. After 8 years, he is out.
Right,
if he
but
tries
once
to remain in, he will be an outlaw.
But once they declare martial law, the Constitution is no longer relevant.
And the federal government ceases to exist because the federal government gains its authority from the Constitution. At that time, we all have a very difficult moral question to face.
And that is?
And I don't want federal agents visiting you tomorrow, so I won't go into more detail. But Constitution, okay, the Constitution does say that habeas corpus can be suspended, and the clear implication there is if the courts cannot convene, yes, then there's a logical reason not to have habeas corpus, because you can't put someone on trial if the courts aren't functioning. But as for the whole concept of martial law, I do not believe that the Constitution authorizes it, and certainly the Constitution doesn't authorize any suspension of the Constitution, because if the Constitution is suspended, no federal agent has any authority at all. They all become outlaws if they try to do anything to the American people, and we all know what we should do with outlaws, or what we have to do with outlaws if you have wives, children, grandchildren to take care of.
Well, we won't ask you to do anything that will get you a visit, Dave. Although some people have been visited for much less.
Mm-hmm. Never been visited yet.
Well, let's hope you don't. But I don't understand. If we're sitting here coming up with better ideas, we're on the side of the Constitution. We don't have any violent intent whatsoever. We just want
violence, correct.
Right, we just want a better country for future generations. How can anybody call somebody with those ideas a terrorist?
Because they're evil liars who want to enslave us. They're of their father, the devil. The truth is not in them.
Why do you think Republicans don't want to see those kinds of people in their party?
You mean the traitors, or you mean the patriots?
The traitors. What do they have to gain out of all of this? Have they? I think they treat the party like a corporation. You have to kiss a lot of ass to move up in a corporation.
That's the problem right there. That's the beginning of the problem.
And I think that's what's happening. I think that is a big problem. That the right people never get a chance because there's too much corporate kiss-assing going on in these parties.
They don't want people to see that there are the right people. It's like you know how you tell whether a coin is counterfeit or not? You tell whether a coin is counterfeit by putting it next to a real coin. If you have silver or gold coins, and you have a couple of real ones, the counterfeit stands out very, very clearly. The same thing in the Republican or Democrat or any other party for that matter. If you have counterfeits there next to the real thing, then the counterfeits become obvious to everybody.
But then if you have a public education system, such as a Department of Education, then you can switch the tables.
I will vote, if I'm elected, I will vote to defund and then abolish the Federal Department of Education. The FedGov does not have any authority under the Constitution to meddle with education in any way except for the military academies. When I ran for state representative in 2010, I proposed the Macko Public Education Reform Plan, which would have solved all of the problems of the government or public schools. Unfortunately, even most of my fellow libertarians shied away from that. If you ever run for state representative and want to be able to honestly say that your reform plan would solve every one of the problems of the government schools, drugs, shootings, questions as to whether to teach evolution or creationism, then the Macko Education Reform Plan is what you should do. And I tried to be moderate. I said I'd want to phase them out within 3 years. Of course, if you want to go for 2 or 1 before you shut them down, that's up to you. We will not be a free country until the last public or government school is sold.
And you know, the reason people laugh at such things is because it's all they've ever. Well, not only that, it's all they've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
They think that's the way that it's always been. When was the Department of Education brought about?
1979 by Jimmy Carter to pay off the teachers' unions.
So not even what, 30 years ago? 30-some years ago?
35,
That's not that long.
Yeah. No,
that's not that long in the history of the United States. So why would it then make...
Here's a good guideline. If we didn't have it in 1900, we don't need, as far as government programs or laws are concerned, except for the 22nd Amendment, if we didn't have it in 1900, we don't need it now. I'll let women's suffrage go. But,
absolutely.
And by the way, government schools, public education is one of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. Karl Marx knew what he was doing when he wanted to enslave the world.
Yeah, and you know, when they came up with their plans, they studied our Constitution. They knew how to use our own Constitution against us and then pervert it. Look at the president. He is a constitutional scholar.
Yeah. The same way Hannibal Lecter was a food connoisseur.
All right, we got
Jack the Ripper. Same way Jack the Ripper was he probably was a surgeon, but
All right. This is a good place to end the show tonight. Dave, we'll be on Wednesday, God willing. And I should have more clips by then to play, and we'll go over those. But I am looking for a new co-host, ladies and gentlemen. I need somebody who believes in the Constitution, who believes that fair is fair, who believes that you should be honest, who believes that we need to leave this country a better place for future generations, and somebody who isn't afraid to say it. So, Dave, with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Do you have anything you want to add before we go?
Yes, MackoForLiberty.org, my website, www.MackoForLiberty.org. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks very much for coming on tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, God bless you all, and God bless America.